very lovely air stewardess looking after me. I was all over the place, just getting through lots of tissues and crying. And then I thought, look, I've got to get a grip here and do something useful for Diana. And I decided the first thing that needed to be done was to find somebody to write and deliver the eulogy.
September 6, 1997. Westminster Abbey holds its breath. Charles Spencer walks to the pulpit, and 2,000 mourners inside the church go quiet. Outside, more than 1 million people press against barricades along the funeral route, listening through loudspeakers bolted to lampposts across London. He is 33 years old. He is burying his sister. His hands rest on the edges of his notes. His jaw is set. Cameras from networks around the world broadcast this moment live to an estimated worldwide audience of over 2 billion people. Queen Elizabeth II sits feet away. Prince Charles, now King Charles III, sits beside his 2 sons, William and Harry, ages 15 and 12. Spencer begins to speak, and within minutes the words leaving his mouth are not the words the royal family expected to hear that morning. He calls his sister the most hunted person of the modern age. He tells the Abbey, in front of the family that raised her and later pushed her out, that her blood relatives will help guide her 2 boys, a line most people in that room understand as a direct message to the Windsors. Outside, on the streets of London, the crowd starts clapping. The applause rolls toward the Abbey doors like a wave nobody planned and nobody can stop. It reaches the mourners inside. They start clapping too. Hi viewers, quick question before we go further. If you remember September of 1997, tell me in the comments what country you were living in when you first heard that Diana had died. 29 years later, Charles Spencer, the 9th Earl Spencer, remains the family member the institution has never fully managed to explain away. He has survived 3 divorces, published a memoir detailing abuse he suffered as a boy at boarding school, and held on to Althorpe, the Spencer family's estate in Northamptonshire, for 5 centuries, as the one patch of ground where Diana's story still belongs to her blood family, not Buckingham Palace. But it started here, at this pulpit, with a eulogy the palace never approved and could never fully take back. This story is not about whether Charles Spencer loved his sister. Nobody disputes that. The real question is what happens when private grief turns into decades of public pressure. Pressure an institution built on silence was never designed to handle. And almost 3 decades on, that pressure has not disappeared. It has only changed shape, and it is about to resurface in a way the palace cannot simply wait out. To understand why one eulogy still echoes through Kensington Palace and Clarence House today, you have to go back further than the funeral, back to who Diana was before the cameras ever found her. February 24th, 1981. Diana Spencer stands beside Prince Charles in the gardens of Buckingham Palace, a sapphire and diamond ring catching the winter light on her hand. A reporter asks the question every camera in the room is waiting for. Are you in love? Diana answers instantly, of course. Charles pauses, then adds a line that will follow him for the rest of his life. Whatever love means. Diana's smile does not move, but her eyes flick sideways, just for a second, toward the man she is about to marry. She is 19 years old. Rewind 14 years, and that same nervous energy already lives in a smaller version of her, running across Park House on the Sandringham estate, where the Spencers rent their home from the Queen herself. Diana is 6 when her parents' marriage collapses into one of the most public divorce battles Britain has seen. Her own grandmother testifies against her mother in court. Custody goes to her father, later the 8th Earl Spencer. Royal biographers have long pointed to that courtroom as the moment Diana first learned private pain could become public property. By her late teens, Diana is working as a nursery school assistant in London, sharing a flat with 3 friends, living an unremarkable life for a future princess. She meets Charles properly through her older sister, Lady Sarah Spencer, who dated him first. Within a year, Diana Spencer, a shy 19-year-old with almost no public profile, is engaged to the heir to the British throne. The palace calls it a fairy tale. The press calls it the wedding of the century. Royal biographers would later describe it differently. 2 people from radically different emotional worlds, pushed together by timing and family pressure. Diana does not know yet what she is walking into. She does not know about the previous relationship her fiancé has never fully let go of. The girl who once hoovered the halls of Althorpe for pocket money is about to become the most photographed woman on Earth. On July 29, 1981, 750 million people around the world.
Us and It's perfect.
What do you think your mother would have thought of Meghan or said about Meghan?
Oh, they'd be thick as thieves. Without question. I think she would be over the moon, jumping up and down, so excited for me. But then, as I said, would have...
Watch her walk into St. Paul's Cathedral in a dress with a 25-foot train, her hands trembling slightly as she takes her father's arm. She is smiling. She is also, by her own later account, terrified. Nobody in that crowd, and nobody watching on television that morning, has any idea how the story actually ends. They see a princess. They do not see a 19-year-old who has just agreed to spend the rest of her life inside an institution built centuries before she was born. One that has never had to make room for a person quite like her. November 1995. A television crew sets up lighting inside a private room at Kensington Palace, and almost nobody outside that room knows filming is happening. No press office signed off on this. No royal aide is standing by with approved talking points. Diana, Princess of Wales, sits down across from journalist Martin Bashir for what will become one of the most watched interviews in British broadcasting history. And she does it without telling the Queen. The cameras roll. Diana's hands stay folded in her lap. Her eyes are heavily lined, her voice steady but low. And when Bashir asks about her marriage, she gives an answer that will end up in newspaper headlines around the world within hours of broadcast. There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. 20 million people in Britain alone watched that broadcast. The palace has no idea it is coming until it is already airing. To understand how a princess ends up secretly recording a confession like that, you have to go back to a marriage cracking almost from the start. By 1986, biographers describe a household under enormous strain. Diana struggles with bulimia, a battle she would later describe in her own words, while Charles maintains a relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles that predates the marriage and, by his own later admission, never fully ended. In 1992, journalist Andrew Morton publishes Diana, Her True Story, a book later confirmed to have been written with Diana's direct, secret cooperation. That same year, the Queen calls it her annus horribilis, her horrible year, as the marriage's collapse becomes public knowledge. Charles and Diana formally separate in December 1992. Then, in 1994, Charles does something no modern heir to the throne had done before. In a televised interview with Jonathan Dimbleby, he admits to the affair with Camilla directly, telling viewers he remained faithful to his marriage only until it became irretrievable. The divorce is finalized on August 28, 1996. Diana keeps the title Princess of Wales. She loses the style Her Royal Highness. Royal commentators have long debated which side lost more in the court of public opinion. Some point to Charles's Dimbleby confession as the moment the monarchy's managed image cracked open on national television. Others point to the Panorama interview, arguing Diana's willingness to speak plainly on camera changed what the public expected from every royal after her. But one fact is not in dispute. By the time the ink dries on that divorce, Diana Spencer is no longer just a member of the royal family. She is bigger than it. Lower in rank on paper, yet unmatched in public affection. An imbalance the institution has never fully learned how to manage. And somewhere inside Clarence House, a woman named Camilla Parker Bowles is about to find out how expensive that public affection can be for whoever gets cast as the story's villain. January 1993. British tabloids splash a story across their front pages that the palace has no way to spin. A recording of a private phone call between Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles, intercepted years earlier, has leaked to the press. Newspapers dub it Camillagate. Overnight, the woman most of the public had never heard mentioned by name becomes the most despised figure in Britain. Camilla does not give a press conference. She does not appear on television to explain herself. For years, she barely appears in public at all, reportedly advised by aides to stay out of sight while the anger aimed at her slowly cools. Reporters camp outside her home for days at a time. That silence becomes its own kind of strategy, one that will take the better part of 3 decades to fully pay off. By the time Diana dies in August 1997, Camilla's public approval sits near rock bottom, according to polling from that period. Being publicly linked to the collapse of the world's most beloved princess's marriage is not a reputation any public relations campaign can fix quickly. So, instead of a fast rebrand,
listens to you, or you feel no one's listening to you, all sorts of things start to happen. For instance, you have so much pain inside yourself that you try and hurt yourself on the outside because you want help, but it's the wrong help you're asking for. People see it as crying wolf or attention seeking, and they think because you're in the media all the time, you've got enough attention.
what follows is a slow one, stretched across nearly a decade. Charles and Camilla marry in a civil ceremony at Windsor Guildhall. The date itself tells its own story. The wedding is pushed back a full day from April 8th to April 9th, 2005, after Pope John Paul II's funeral is scheduled for the original date, and several dignitaries need to attend both events. It is a small ceremony compared to 1981. 30 guests inside the Guildhall, no Westminster Abbey, no procession watched by billions. The Queen attends the blessing service held afterward at St. George's Chapel, but notably skipped the civil ceremony itself. A choice royal commentators at the time read as measured, cautious support rather than full-throated celebration. Camilla takes the title Duchess of Cornwall, not Princess of Wales, a title she and Charles agree to set aside out of respect for how closely the public still associates it with Diana. William and Harry both attend, and a photograph greeting their new stepmother warmly outside the chapel. Images the palace uses deliberately to signal family unity to a still skeptical public. Public opinion shifts gradually across the 2000s and 10s, aided by a steady schedule of low-key charity work and a palace media strategy that royal commentators have described as patient, incremental, and deliberately unhurried. By the time Queen Elizabeth II dies in September 2022, Camilla becomes Queen Consort. At the coronation in May 2023, she is crowned Queen. The rehabilitation, 3 decades in the making, is complete on paper. But paper is not memory. And the British public, as royal historians are quick to point out, has a long one. The battle was never only about a marriage falling apart. It became a battle over who gets to write the version of history that survives. Every morning, before the gates of Althorpe open to the public, Charles Spencer walks a private path down to a small island in the middle of an ornamental lake known as the Round Oval. There are no tour groups here yet, no camera phones, no gift shop selling postcards. Just 4 black swans on the water, a stand of oak trees planted in a circle, and a single grave marker at the centre. This is where Diana, Princess of Wales, is buried. Not in a royal vault, not on Windsor grounds, but on land that has belonged to the Spencer family for nearly 500 years. Spencer chose the island himself in the days after her death in 1997, reportedly out of concern that a grave in the churchyard at Great Brington, the village nearest Althorpe, could not be properly protected from the crowds he knew would keep coming for years, maybe decades afterward. It was, in effect, the first major decision he made, as the family member now responsible for guarding his sister's resting place. And, in the years since, for guarding something far harder to protect, her story. Each summer, Althorpe opens its doors and its Diana exhibition to paying visitors, drawing people from across the world who want to see her christening gown, her handwritten letters, and photographs from her childhood at the house. Spencer has described the exhibition, in interviews over the years, as his way of making sure his sister is remembered as a full person, rather than a tabloid headline. Critics, and even some royal commentators, have pointed out the obvious tension in that mission. Spencer is simultaneously the family member most protective of Diana's private memory, and the one who has built a public, ticketed business around sharing it. His own life, meanwhile, has rarely stayed private. 3 marriages have ended in divorce, each one covered in detail by the same tabloids. He has spent decades trying to keep at a distance from Diana's legacy. In 2024, he published a memoir, revealing the abuse he suffered as a child at Maidwell Hall, a boarding school he attended before Eton, describing beatings and a culture of cruelty he had kept hidden for more than 50 years. The book made headlines of its own and reframed, for many readers, how the public understands the guarded, formal man who once stood at that pulpit in 1997 and appeared, on the surface, entirely composed. Spencer rarely comments directly on the royal family today. When journalists ask him about Camilla, about Charles, about the monarchy his sister once belonged to, he tends to answer carefully, redirecting toward family rather than institution. But guarding a story and controlling it are 2 very different jobs, and Spencer has spent nearly 30 years balancing both. Now that balance is about to become impossible for him to manage quietly. October 30th, 2025. Just after 6 in the evening, a short statement lands from the press office at Buckingham Palace. No press conference, no interview, just a few paragraphs, released jointly on behalf of King Charles III and Queen Camilla, that end one of the most damaging chapters in the modern monarchy's history. The king has initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles, and honours of his younger brother. Effective immediately, Prince Andrew will now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. His 75-year lease on Royal Lodge, the 30-room Windsor mansion he has occupied for 2 decades with his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, is formally surrendered. Andrew, who has no clear income, will move to the Sandringham estate, funded privately by Charles rather than by the taxpayer. Sarah Ferguson will no longer go by the Duchess of York and will make her own living arrangements. Nothing this severe has happened at Buckingham Palace since 1919, when one of Queen Victoria's grandsons lost his dukedom for fighting alongside the Germans in World War I. The trigger this time is not a war. It is the fallout from Andrew's association with the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, reignited by a posthumously published memoir from Virginia Giuffre, who had long accused Andrew of sexual assault when she was a minor, an allegation he continues to deny. Giuffre died earlier that same year. The palace statement closes by expressing sympathy for victims and survivors of any and all forms of abuse. For King Charles III, the decision is not just a family reckoning. It is a demonstration of something royal commentators have discussed for years, well before he even took the throne: his preference for a smaller, more disciplined monarchy, with fewer working royals and far less patience for scandal bleeding into the institution's public image. That instinct did not start with Andrew. It started 3 years earlier, on September 8, 2022, the day Queen Elizabeth II dies at Balmoral after 70 years on the throne. Charles becomes king within hours. Camilla becomes queen consort. William, 39 at the time, inherits the title Prince of Wales, along with an inheritance far heavier than any dukedom. The monarchy Charles inherited from his mother ran on continuity, tradition, and rarely explaining itself. The one he is building now runs on damage control, faster decisions, and a willingness to publicly discipline even his own brother when the institution's reputation is at stake. And the man standing next in line to run it is about to make a decision of his own that most future kings would never dare make public. June 2026. Prince William's accountants publish a number no heir to the throne has ever made public before: £7.76 million. The income tax he paid last year, voluntarily, on a private income of £21.6 million generated by the Duchy of Cornwall. No previous Prince of Wales has ever put his tax bill in writing for the public to see. The number lands inside a wider shake-up. William has ordered the duchy to sell off roughly 1/5 of its holdings, refocusing the estate around 5 core regions: Cornwall, the Isles of Scilly, Dartmoor, Bath and its surrounding area, and Kennington in South London. He has also pulled rental income tied to a Dartmoor prison out of his own accounts entirely, after the site closed over dangerous levels of radon gas, redirecting that money into the local community while the building's future stays unresolved. The Duchy of Cornwall was created in 1337 by King Edward III to fund the heir to the throne, and for most of its history, it operated exactly the way royal finances have always operated: quietly, privately, mostly out of public view. William's decision to publish his tax bill, restructure the portfolio, and walk away from income tied to a public health hazard is something royal commentators describe as a deliberate break from that tradition, an attempt to get ahead of the transparency debate before Parliament, or the press, forces it on him. It is also a preview of the kind of king he intends to be. William was 39 when his father became monarch, and he became Prince of Wales, inheriting a role his mother never lived to see him hold. He has spent the years since building a public identity distinct from both his father's formality and his late mother's raw, emotional openness, more structured, more policy-driven, focused on causes like homelessness and mental health rather than headline-grabbing gestures. Royal historians have started asking a pointed question. Can William modernise the monarchy from the inside without triggering the same institutional resistance that made his mother's life and his Uncle Andrew's downfall so difficult to manage? Some commentators argue transparency is the only tool the modern monarchy has left to rebuild public trust. Others warn that opening the books, even partially, invites more scrutiny than the institution can comfortably survive over the long run. Nobody, including William, has a confirmed answer yet. But the balance he is trying to strike did not begin with him. March 2024. Kensington Palace releases a Mother's Day photograph of Catherine, Princess of Wales, smiling with her 3 children. Within hours, every major international photo agency pulls the image. Editors spot signs of digital manipulation, a sleeve that does not quite line up, a zipper that vanishes. Catherine, recovering from abdominal surgery and barely seen in public for weeks, later admits on camera that she edited the photo herself. The apology does nothing to slow the story down. Online conspiracy theories about her health explode within days, some wild enough to make international headlines of their own. Charles Spencer is asked about it directly during a BBC interview that same week. Asked whether today's internet conspiracy theories are more dangerous than the press intrusion his sister endured, he says plainly, "No, I think it was more dangerous back in the day." He points to 1997 as the moment the industry supporting the paparazzi finally had to confront what its pursuit of Diana had actually cost. That comparison points to something royal commentators return to again and again. Modern royal coverage rewards the simplest possible story: hero versus villain, victim versus institution, even when the truth sitting underneath it is far messier. Social media accelerates the process. A single blurred pixel can travel from an obscure forum to a national newspaper front page within a single afternoon, long before anyone with actual information has time to respond. A funeral eulogy becomes a declaration of war. A wedding date moved by one day becomes proof of a cover-up. A quiet financial disclosure becomes evidence of a scandal, whether or not the underlying numbers support that reading. None of this means every question the public asks is unreasonable. Royal finances, succession planning, and family conduct are legitimate subjects for scrutiny, precisely because taxpayer money and public trust are both involved. The problem is not curiosity. The problem is when curiosity gets compressed into a headline built for clicks rather than context. Real families, even ones photographed on the world's biggest stage, do not sort neatly into good guys and bad guys. But there is one story inside this one that refuses to be simplified, no matter how hard anyone tries. The question of who, decades later, actually gets remembered as having won. August 31st. Every year, on the anniversary of Diana's death, strangers still walk up to the gates of Kensington Palace and leave flowers. Some of them were not even born in 1997. They read the small, faded cards left by other visitors, take a photo, and walk away without ever having met her. Meanwhile, inside the institution she married into, King Charles III sits on the throne. Queen Camilla, once the most publicly despised woman in Britain, wears the crown beside him. On paper, the monarchy survived Diana's death, survived the divorce, survived Camillagate, survived the Panorama interview, and even survived losing a working prince to a sex abuse scandal in 2025. Institutionally, Charles and Camilla won. They hold the titles. They occupy the palaces. Their names sit at the top of the official record. History, in the narrowest legal sense, went their way. But ask a stranger on a London street to name the most beloved member of the royal family of the last 50 years, and Diana's name still comes up first, nearly 3 decades after her death, more often than any living royals, including the ones currently wearing crowns. Survey after survey, biography after biography, documentary after documentary, keeps circling back to her. That is not a title anyone can grant. It cannot be inherited, and it cannot be stripped by royal decree the way Andrew's titles were. Charles Spencer built an island grave and a family exhibition to make sure the woman, not just the tragedy, gets remembered on his terms. Camilla built 3 decades of quiet, patient rehabilitation to make sure the marriage that replaced Diana's would not define her forever. Both projects succeeded in their own separate lanes without ever fully cancelling each other out. which is precisely why the public conversation around all three of them refuses to settle down. That is the part the simple version of this story always leaves out. History does not belong only to institutions with palaces and title. It also belongs to whoever the public decides to keep remembering, year after year, without being asked to. And the public made its decision about Diana a long time ago. What remains is the question of what her sons do with that memory next. December 1993. Diana, Princess of Wales, takes her 11-year-old son by the hand and walks him into the Passage, a homelessness charity in London. William has never been anywhere like it before. He is nervous, unsure of what to expect, standing a little too close to his mother's side. Diana is not nervous at all. She jokes with the staff, sits down next to strangers who have nothing, and treats every person in that room like they matter, because to her, they do. William will later say he did not fully understand, at 11 years old, why his mother kept bringing him to places like that. He understands now. In June 2023, Prince William launches Homewards, a 5-year program aimed at proving homelessness can be made rare, brief, and unrepeated. He returns to the Passage more than once, sometimes with his own son George, standing beside him the same way William once stood beside Diana. By its 3rd anniversary, William says the project has helped thousands of people avoid a housing crisis across 6 locations in the country. That single decision, to keep walking into rooms most of the royal family would rather avoid, is the clearest evidence of what actually survived Diana, Princess of Wales. Not the funeral, not the island grave at Althorpe, not the divorce settlement or the interview, or even the eulogy that shocked a nation into applause. What survived is a habit her sons picked up simply from watching her. The instinct to walk toward the people an institution is built to keep at a comfortable distance. Charles Spencer protects her memory, tending the island grave and curating the exhibition each summer. Camilla, in her own way, absorbed the consequences of that memory for 3 decades before finally being allowed to move past it. William is now busy living out its most practical application. 1 homeless shelter, 1 policy meeting, 1 uncomfortable royal tradition at a time. Each of them, in a different building on a different afternoon, is still answering the same question Diana forced onto the institution the moment she married into it. How much room does duty actually leave for being human? None of this erases the pain, the scandal, or the decades of headlines this story has moved through, chapter by chapter. Royal history rarely resolves as cleanly as a fairy tale, and this one never fully will either. But Diana's greatest influence was never the title she carried. It was the humanity she revealed inside a world built around tradition, protocol, and control. A humanity her sons are still learning how to carry forward, imperfectly, into whatever the monarchy becomes next. That, more than any funeral or headline, is the story that keeps outliving every institution built to contain it.